Hello ladies and gentlemen, I have shared a YouTube video titled India in Egypt. In that video, I have mentioned that the recent genetic evidences suggest that the newer genetic identities like R1 alpha and R1 bravo haplogroups in Y chromosome originated possibly on the Bengal-Myanmar coast during the last glacial period. At the onset of the interglacial period, as the coastal landmass submerged because of the rising sea level, they migrated in waves along with their language and culture. They settled at faraway places like Mediterranean coast and Egypt and established the Egyptian and the Greek civilization. I would like to request my viewers to watch the video India in Egypt, in which I have talked about the events related to the pre-recorded period of India in reasonable details. It would be much easier to follow the context of this episode if the events related to the early human migration explained in that video is understood. The link of that video is given in the description. In this video, I am going to elaborate on the available Greek, Roman and Egyptian records regarding the Gangaridai or ancient Bengal. Did the Greeks and Egyptians keep in touch with their ancestral place Bengal, like the Bengalis do nowadays when they are settled in any other part of the world? Do we really have any authentic record specifically about Bengal at that end? It is high time that we initiated a discussion on Gangaridai or ancient Bengal. I would like to show you a video to elaborate on the issue.
In my view, onward migration of early human fraternities following the last glacial period started from the east coast of India. They settled in Egypt, Greece and the rest of Europe. In the second half of the book, I am discussing about the reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities back to India. It appears that the popular term Indo-Aryan invasion refers to the reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities from Europe. I had to discuss a number of new subjects without which the pre-recorded period of India could not be arranged in a scientific manner. One of these is the formation of a glacial coastal shelf on the Bengal-Myanmar coast during the last glacial period. This resulted in the origin of the newer anatomical modern humans or AMH genetic identities like R1 alpha and R1 bravo haplogroup in Y chromosome on this glacial coastal shelf. During the interglacial period, because of the rise of sea level, submersion of the coastal land initiated the onward migration of the Indian origin fraternities. East coast of India thus played a crucial role in the spread of the Indian origin fraternities with their language and culture to faraway lands like Egypt, Mediterranean coast and Greece. Let us see to what extent this region is recorded in the Western historical texts and how much of it we understand. I would prefer to start the video with a number of issues which are most authentically recorded in the Western world but are seldom discussed in the history of India. I am not a historian and thus I am not going into the details of the authentically recorded history of East Coast of India. But what intrigued me was that several issues about Gangaridai recorded in Western world were often not given due recognition. In this respect, I would like to share a few of my observations. First, as we Google search for Gangaridai, we find an elaborate description of the region recorded in the Greek and Latin records. This article elaborates that several famous Greek and Roman scholars had extensive knowledge about Gangaridai and they kept historical notes about the region. In fact, it even says that Gangaridai was such a formidable kingdom during 4th century BC that Alexander went back with his force after hearing about the phenomenal military strength of the region. Diodorus Siculus in his 1st century BC Bibliotheca Historica mentions that the Gangaridai king had 20,000 cavalry, 200,000 infantry, 2,000 chariots and 4,000 elephants equipped for war. Second, Greek ambassador Megasthenes in his Indica meticulously described Gangaridai region which was totally different from the description of the rest of India available in our ancient Sanskrit and Pali texts. Once again, we prefer to avoid discussing about the contents of Indica, an authentic Greek record. This document definitely formed a major component of the description of the Gangaridai available in the Google today. Megasthenes described following 7 castes, or more appropriately 7 divisions in the social structure of Gangaridhi: philosophers, husbandmen, shepherds, artisans, military or overseers, and counselors and assessors. These counselors and assessors were the most respected fraternity. Kings, treasurers, generals, chief magistrates, arbiters who settle disputes, etc. belong to this fraternity. This classification of a territory of ancient India does not match with the 4 caste social structure comprising of Brahmins, Kshatriyo, Vaishyas and Shudro that is recorded in the Sanskrit texts of India. Is it possible that Megasthenes described Gangaridhi, about which no description is available in Indian texts, whereas the region was well recorded in the Western records? Those of you who are not comfortable with Wikipedia and believe in more authentic records are requested to go through a fabulous document, The Classical Accounts of India by R.C. Mojumdar. Third, let us see where exactly Gangaridai was located. We have a very clear and authentic document in this regard, the Ptolemy's map. Drawn at the beginning of Christian era, it elaborately describes 5 divisions of river Ganga near its delta. It even mentions 5 different Greek names for each division, suggesting that they not only knew about 5 divisions of Ganga delta but were interested to locate the territory more specifically around each division. Pliny named 5 mouths of Ganges as Cambyson, Mega, Cambaricon, Pseudostomon and Antibole. This map clearly establishes the exact location of Gangaridhi at the area right after river Ganga divides into several branches near the delta. Each of these rivers, as can be seen on the map, independently joined the Bay of Bengal. Apart from Gangaridhi, it marks Kiradesh on the east of the delta, suggesting their interest in this region too. The knowledge and interest of the Egyptian and Greek sailors specifically about Gangaridhi and Kiradesh is evident from these records. Fourth, there is another authentic and useful Egyptian document, the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. This is considered to be a compilation by a Greek sailor based in Alexandria, Egypt, once again at the beginning of the Christian era. It provides a description of trade items and names of various ports where the Egyptian sailors ventured during that period on the east coast of Africa as well as on the west and east coast of India. It described territories even farther east of Gangaridai on the Bay of Bengal. Interestingly, in section 65, it mentions a specific location on the north of the eastern edge of Bay of Bengal. This destination was possibly located on the border of Assam and China, from where they collected a product called Malabatram. It could possibly be reached only by sailing upstream Iravati and Chinwin from the Bay of Bengal. I am sure historians are not considering this complex connectivity of this odd corner of northeast India with the Red Sea region. However, I prefer to mention about this as it has a bearing on my subject. In the meantime, I have discovered a number of evidences in northeast India establishing its definite connectivity with the Red Sea region. This is only one of them. Evidently, all the above documents are most authentic historical records. However, we find these authentically recorded texts in the Western world about ancient India are seldom discussed in the history of India and that of Bengal. In fact, earliest recorded period of Indian history should have started based on these authentic records. They are mysteriously missing from our history, possibly because we are unable to understand the ancient connectivity of India with Egypt, Greece and Mediterranean coast. Thus, we are unable to appreciate their extraordinary interest in Gangaridhi of Bengal and Kiratadesha, both of which are located farthest from the Mediterranean region. A mysterious lacuna remains in the ancient history of India related to the Gangaridai region as well. A coastal territory east of Magध remained outside the boundary of Mauryan Empire during the rule of Chandragupta Maurya and his son Bindusara. His grandson Ashoka, however, fought the famous War of Kalinga in the region. But surprisingly, we do not know the name of the king against whom Ashoka fought this destructive war. Though the king of Gangaridai was the only possible and suitable opponent in the region if we consider the Greek records, but Gangaridai as a militarily powerful kingdom or the king of Gangaridai as the opponent of Ashoka is not mentioned anywhere in the ancient history of India. This, however, establishes that there were two militarily powerful kingdoms in eastern India. It is observed that the kingdom of Gangaridai, recorded in the Greek texts and maps as located on the Bengal coast, is shown in our history textbook maps as part of Nanda Empire. This empire would eventually become Mauryan Empire founded by Chandragupta Maurya. This is the crucial historical period when India and this territory for the first time got authentically recorded in the Greek texts. I have not found Nanda Empire mentioned anywhere in the Greek records or even in Indica authored by Megasthenes. The history of Nanda Empire and Nanda dynasty also does not mention that these names were ever recorded in the Greek texts. It is observed that names like Xandramas and Xandrakotas were always conveniently interpreted as that of Chandragupta Maurya, whereas neither Gupta nor Maurya is part of these Greek names. On the other hand, Xandrakotas matches much better with Chandraketu. Incidentally, there is a famous archaeological site near Kolkata which is known as Chandraketu God, meaning the fort of King Chandraketu. The estimated period of this site matches quite well with the period of visit of Megasthenes and Alexander in India. Moreover, this site is located within the territory of Gangaridai marked in Ptolemy's map. I fail to understand why these historical records and archaeological findings are completely ignored and often suppressed in our history. This irrational interpretation was probably a British compulsion to eliminate any discussion about Gangaridai in the Indian history. In fact, it appears that they had achieved their goal quite successfully. Historians would be able to confirm why this territory on coastal Bengal is mentioned as a part of Nanda Empire in Indian history and not separately as Gangaridai as mentioned in Greek records. By erroneously referring the region as part of Nanda Empire and the names of kings wrongly interpreted as kings belonging to the Nanda and Mauryan dynasties, the glorious history of Gangaridai and its mighty kings got eliminated from our Indian history. This is highly misleading and intriguing at the same time. It is possible that these two were independent kingdoms. Gangaridai on coastal Bengal remained independent and outside the Nanda Empire, which extended up to northern India. Even during the rule of Chandragupta Maurya and Bindusara of Mauryan Empire, this territory remained independent. In all probability, Emperor Ashoka fought his famous Kalinga war against the king of Gangaridai. Are we blindly following our own history that was handed over to us by our foreign masters? Are we missing the most important period and territory of our glorious past and are still not able to showcase it to the entire world even after 70 years of independence? Once we discuss the probable events of the pre-recorded period in relation to the east coast of India, we may find the missing link. Once we consider the onward migration of the Indian origin fraternities from the east coast to these faraway places, we would be able to appreciate the ethnic connectivity and the spread of Indian languages and their culture to these distant lands. This would also provide us an idea about their mysterious and extraordinary interest in Gangaridai as they were keen to return to this land. Finally, once we consider the reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities at a later date from Egypt, Greece and Mediterranean coast, we find emergence of various settlements all over India, including many around the Gangaridai region. Those who came by the Trans-Himalayan land route settled along the Uttarapath in Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, North Bengal and Northeast India, while those who returned by sea route from the Red Sea region settled in Odisha, East Bengal, Assam and Tripura, whose language and culture is quite comparable to that of present-day West Bengal. Many regions of Northeast India appear to have a matriarchal descent culture similar to West Bengal. These are the features we see on ground, but their origin are rarely explained in our history and thus little understood. Till we manage to arrange the pre-recorded past of India in a sensible manner, we would not be comfortable quoting from the Greek, Egyptian and Roman records concerning our country. That is precisely what is happening at present and with our present understanding. Strangely, we tend to ignore and often suppress these authentically recorded documents which are easily available. It is high time that we accept these historical facts and try to understand the probable sequence of events of the pre-recorded past of India, without which the history of India and that of the world would remain inaccurate. It is worth considering all the data and evidences which has emerged in the last couple of decades in genetics, archaeology, anthropology, linguistics and culture. In fact, when we include all these scientific data available at the moment, the presentation would become more acceptable to the global academic community. Let us make an effort to appreciate this new approach towards understanding the pre-recorded past of India.
Thank you very much for watching this video. This subject is little discussed and thus it may have evoked a series of questions in your mind. My latest publication, India in Egypt, deals with many such unexplained issues in reasonable details. Do connect with us to know more.